Hello, everyone, and welcome in. My name is Bryce Koon. This is Swarm Talk brought to you by Section 103 right here on the Credit Booth YouTube channel. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. And yes, I'm in Ralph's apartment because we made the trip back to Georgia. A lot of housekeeping things to start the show off with today, but we made the trip to Georgia, and kind of where we're at right now is the internet where we're staying, undisclosed location. Not good enough. Not good enough. So, indeed, we're here talking a little bit of college football from the friendly confines of Ralph's apartment. I didn't even know he had all this stuff. So, we got the Troy jersey back here. Is it a Yao Ming jersey? Yao Ming jersey. He's right over here. And then we have the Texas Tech jersey, the Troy flag, Troy jersey. And then what you guys can't see, Ralph, can we show these people this? So, Ralph has the makings of an elite background setup. Honestly, maybe better than mine. But look at this. The full size from the football ops building, Tennessee Vols helmet. So there we go. Welcome in. Welcome in. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. You're watching on all those platforms. We appreciate you there as well. And hey, I'm pumped to talk about this game. Haven't been able to talk about this game as much as I wanted to. I was driving on Wednesday back to Georgia, and Ralph and Will talked about it. Why did I mistake Gavin for Will? They talked about this game a little bit. I hadn't even watched it or listened to it, so I have no clue what they said. I did see some of the comments about where Will thinks Darian Menza might be and who he might be. Not sure what that means, but a couple housekeeping things. One, I didn't do an episode on this, so I'll just briefly talk about this, for a couple minutes. Liked the performance last weekend. Virginia Tech's a scrappy team. They still have some talent, but they are in a really, really tough situation. You cover the spread, and you earn a home win. I think that's something you're continuing to make Bobby Dodd a tough place to play. And so hats off to them. Thought they played real well. Malachi Hosley has been exactly what fans hoped they would be. I question if he would be. He's answered that resoundingly. And you have a legitimate, probably one of the best 1-2 running back punches in the country when fully healthy in terms of Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley. So absolutely love that. The other news, I guess we'll kind of say here is, and briefly talk about this. So loved the Virginia Tech game. Brent Key in the subject matter of different jobs. And I'll probably go into this more next week when we get back down to the boot. But, look, Brent Key's name is going to surface around college football head coaching jobs because he's doing a lot of great things. He's in the, mid-season award watch list in terms of how well he's done at Georgia Tech. That's going to happen. Like that, the natural progression of, how your head coach is viewed by power programs. That's what's going to happen. His name's going to pop up. I don't seriously consider him to ever leave Georgia Tech unless it's like just this drop dead cannot, like Alabama comes calling in like 5 years. And I'll say this too, like I don't think he leaves, and this is real. Maybe this comes back to bite me. I don't think he leaves Georgia Tech unless he wins big wins big in Atlanta. And I just think that he feels like there's an opportunity to go win big for his alma mater. And so I just look, he's going to be in the mix. You're going to see these, betting odds lists come out. You're going to see these, different hot boards that are going to continue to come out. He's not leaving this offseason. Like it would just absolutely floor me to see Brent Key leave Georgia Tech. The only way I would see him leave is like, hey, maybe in 9-10 years, maybe he has won a national championship at Georgia Tech and Alabama backs the Brinks truck up. I mean, I don't know. That's hypothetical. That's a decade from now. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see him leaving necessarily to go do that. So that's kind of, I guess, the housekeeping details as we hit 5 minutes on the dot in terms of that. As Zach says, he still believes. Bryce is genuinely asking in the title, why is Duke favored? And then Nancy says, leaving in a few minutes for Durham. Have a safe trip there, Nancy. Beautiful this time of year. Dr. Bob's heading up there as well. Zach Garrison, they're running back 1.1 and running back 2. Ultima says go Jackets, and Zach says Jonesy's probably pissed right now. He might be. Let's talk about this game. Why is Duke favored? And I'm going to get into some of the keys, maybe the scouting reports of what I've got here. But I wanted to kind of start this thing off with a quote that Manny Diaz said this past Monday. And, one of those things where he says, essentially, this game determines or could determine who is representing the ACC in December in Charlotte. Maybe both of these teams somehow make it. But for right now, this is a de facto feels like a playoff game for one of these two teams to go to the ACC title game, therefore have a spot to secure a place in the college football playoff. So this is a playoff for the playoff for a playoff spot. You following along with that? For Duke, I think this is one thing, and Manny Diaz said this. I got the quote right here. So all that with a chance to have a big time atmosphere, a big time game here on campus Saturday. We're looking forward to a national TV audience and putting our best game to date for everyone else, or for everyone to see. Duke has had some opportunities, and Duke has had some, you know, some chances to, I think, nationally put their name out there. They've fallen, I feel like, in both of those. Obviously, the Illinois game, which I'm going to get to that in a second, but the Illinois game where, Luke Altmaier and company come in for that noon kickoff, and it just doesn't work out for Duke. Obviously, Illinois is a very good football team. And then, you know, they go on the road to Tulane. Tulane's look, Ralph and I watched Tulane in person. They messed around, play with their food a little bit against an East Carolina team that was kind of sneaky last Thursday night. But Tulane's a well-coached team. They're a veteran team. They've got a good mix of players who understand and bought in that system. They brought in Jake Retzlaff, who has been more than dynamic at the G5 level there for Tulane. So all things considered, they've lost to two pretty good teams in terms of that. I would argue that Tulane should probably be, is probably a fringe top 35 team. So you've lost to some good teams, and that's about where you are probably in terms of what Duke is. You're a top 35 team right now, I would say. So when you look at this and this game and what it means, and why is Duke favored? Well, someone pointed right here, Duke's has had 2 weeks to essentially prepare for this game. That has to be a lot of it. They're playing at home. Georgia Tech has been really good at home this season. On the road, they knocked off Colorado there early in the season. But I think just in terms of, you're going to give a little edge to the home field advantage. This is about as close of a pick'em game you're going to have, by the way. If this spread was like 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, I'd be more appalled. But I think the fact that we're looking at a 1.5 point spread per our friends over at FanDuel, it really kind of opens this whole thing up to the fact of like, hey, they think this is a pick'em game. They're giving Duke the slight edge because they're going to be playing this game at home. So that is what it is. And I know Zach says right here, he goes, Wallace Wade has the home field advantage of your local high school stadium. While that might be true, especially for a noon kickoff at times, I don't want to disrespect the Dukies. But I think also, too, and I always talk about this, like the advantage of sleeping in your own bed, the advantage of having your routine at home that you know what you're going to do. You go on the road, there could be a lot of external factors that you can't control. And that might sound crazy to some people, but a lot of coaches are very routine based. Brent Key fits that model to the T of what he likes to do. So I think when you're kind of sitting here and you're talking about, okay, you have that 1.5 point spread, that's really what I would favor. That's really what I would favor. So it's one of those things for me. Look, you're going on the road. You got to go prove yourself against a team that is a really good team. And bottom line, you're okay. I just hit the microphone. All right. So I guess where do I want to take this first? Let's talk about Duke. And a lot of people are trying to discredit. This is the transitive property we have in college football now it's ridiculous. I think that, for me, with how we try to project college football, the one thing you have to understand is it's completely chaotic. And we're living in an age in college football where each and every single week you can beat anybody you play. Anybody. And we're seeing that. I mean, there's just not these utterly dominant, the whole two deep is full of 5 stars like we maybe saw a decade ago. So that's what makes college football fun. It's also what makes it largely unpredictable. So for this game, I think I've seen a lot of Tech fans and some people just kind of maybe downplay Duke because, oh, well, they lost to Illinois. Well, and then Illinois got destroyed by Indiana. And then Illinois got beat by Ohio State. Well, let's take a 30,000-foot view. Let's take a step back from that and let's ask, what does that even really mean, right? What does that how do you quantify that to be able to tell you what's going to happen on Saturday? Well, one, you can't because it's just you can't really make a true judgment call. You can talk about what you think about it's going to happen, and I'll do that. But I think first of all, starting, I'm not going to discredit Manny Diaz's program because they lost to Illinois, who then lost to Indiana. We talked about this earlier in the week, on Sunday night show. Indiana to me is one of the elite teams in college football right now. So you getting blown out by an elite team, that's what an elite team's supposed to do. I don't think it makes Illinois a fraud or makes them not what they are. They just, you know, what they are is a two-loss team that has lost to two really, really good teams, maybe two of the top four teams in the country. And yes, they lost that game really bad. That happens sometimes. It doesn't mean that you suck or you're bad or any of these things. I think Brett Bielema and company have a good program. Luke Altmaier's a veteran quarterback. So all that to say is Duke losing the game that they did to Illinois, different times of the season, different locations. It's really hard to just group everything together and say, well, here's everything we know. Let's just move forward with kind of what we're talking about. So I'm not necessarily basing anything off of that, in my opinion. So I think that we dive in. Why is Duke? I guess, why is Duke favored in this? Duke's rested, fresh off the bye week. Manny Diaz is a good football coach and has had time to prepare, right? So I think that's one of those things. Duke's offense, I got a couple things here for you. Duke's offense has been rolling as of late. They've scored 38 or more points in their last 3 games. I don't necessarily really care who they've played. If you're scoring nearly 40 points a game, like you're doing some things offensively that, I mean, that's just a good recipe for success and can carry over. You know, I think this is a game where when you look at why Duke's favored, why people have some confidence in Duke to be able to pull off, I guess we're going to call it an upset over a ranked Georgia Tech team, is because if this offense gets rolling, it has shown it's hard to stop. And Georgia Tech's defense is a group that, well, I think plays well together and has growing pains in year one under Blake Gideon. They haven't really faced an electric offense. You kind of go down the list of what Georgia Tech has faced. I mean, Colorado's a disaster offensively with not a ton of identity. It's just, let's see how we can luck into 30 points a game. Clemson is a shell of what we thought they would be offensively, and they're not explosive. One of the least explosive teams in the ACC. Outside of that, who have you faced that you're like, okay, offensively they've really challenged us? You got to go to Wake Forest. I'm not going to sit here even try to tell you that Wake Forest is similar to what Duke is putting out there in terms of offense. I just don't think they are. So when you look at what Duke's offense brings to the table, I mean, here's some things for you. It's an offense that has been consistent. They are top 3 in the ACC, the third-ranked passing offense in the conference. Darian Menza, who we all know, is second in the league in passing yards, just 1838 there. Like I said, they're averaging over 42 points a game over the last 3 games. Their run game, by the way, they've got a young kid from Louisiana that wanted to play at LSU. They recruited him elsewhere in terms of how they wanted to, utilize him. Nate Shepard, dynamic high school running back. Unreal. Like, go look at his high school statistics. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. So Shepard has 447 yards on the ground, and it's this is why, right? You've had a run game that's kind of come alive. I know that Darian Menza isn't necessarily a true dual threat. He has an opportunity to run, and I think he can make enough plays with his legs to keep you honest. But you're facing a Georgia Tech defense that is last in the ACC against the run. 170 yards a game they're giving up. I think that's the biggest concern for me in this game is like defensively, does something change to where can you shut them down? That to me is got to be the biggest question because they're going to be able to throw the ball, and I think they're going to get their plays. Say Amari Harvey is not going to be playing in this game. Akilo Stone, those are 2 veteran players in this defense that I think really hurts you, and raises the question even more of how can you combat this effectively for a full 60 minutes. You're going to have some guys step up in those roles. But when you talk about a group that it's run game is coming into form, they already have a legitimate passing game. we're looking at the first true opponent offensively that Georgia Tech has faced that has a balanced offensive attack. And so for us to sit here and say, oh, it'll be fine, don't worry about it, I think, that there's nothing more that pisses me off than watching people just sit on there and say, don't worry about it, it'll happen. I mean, it's called hopium. You hope it will be. If you'd like to engage in actual banter back and forth in terms of college football talk, you have to be willing to acknowledge both sides of the aisle. So in terms of that, it may not turn out to be a problem, but all the makings are there for if it happens, we can sit there and say, yeah, the numbers told us this. The numbers told us that Duke's passing game was one of the best in the conference, that their run game was really coming along, that their offense was humming. And the numbers also tell you that Georgia Tech hasn't faced an offense that has been this balanced up until this point in the season. So I think in terms of what you are concerned about, that's got to be the biggest concern is how do you get off the field in third downs? How do you force them into third and long situations where you make it obvious what they have to do? I think that to me is where that's the recipe for success. And so you need to see more out of your edges. You need to see some more out of guys like Bradford off the edge. I mean, some of these young guys that I talked last week in the Mailbag podcast against who have shown a knack for being able to get after the quarterback, that has to come to fruition in this game. I think you have to disrupt Darian Menza, and you have to disrupt an offense that wants to stay on schedule and needs to stay ahead of the chains. If you can get them into, if we go back and look, and there's more third down and long situations, which is quantified, I believe, by 3rd and 7+. If you have more of those third down opportunities as a defense against Duke's offense, I say Georgia Tech wins the football game. If we start seeing a lot of 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s, that's when it kind of gets iffy for me because they've got the option to really dive into that RPO game. They've got the option to really utilize just the straight running game. And so, it's going to be interesting. I think that's to put a bow on that segment right there. You haven't faced an offense that on paper is as balanced and efficient as them. And so we don't really know. Clemson couldn't throw the ball. So you knew that they were going to run the football. Colorado, no one knew what they were doing out there. Wake Forest, you knew they were going to have to really, truly run the football. Virginia Tech was going to be more of a run-heavy type of scheme. So you just have entered these situations to where you think you might know, and, that this offense is pretty good. I just go back to that Clemson game. It's crazy how bad they are, offensively at least. And then you get to a point where it's like, hey, they're not what we thought they were, so we haven't faced that yet. Duke's going to provide that type of challenge, I think. And you've also got to turn something 180, right? We talk a lot about this. Like something has to actually change about this team and this group for you to go win this football game. And right now is you have to be better against the run. Like you have to stay gap sound. You have to stay assignment sound. You have to do your job. The last thing I'll say this is Georgia Tech's front seven has to play as a cohesive unit this week. Even going back and watching some of the games and even that Virginia Tech game, a lot of times when they play the run, you got guys trying to make individual plays, and you cannot get outside of yourself against a team, especially like Duke, who is pretty effective at making you pay if you do that. So that to me is one of the things right there. So I think that's why Duke, probably has a little bit of the advantage. And we flip it over to the other side of the football here. And before we do, as always, I want to tell you about our friends who just got a nice little restock, by the way. I got to find this. There we go. They got a little restock. It's our friends over at Section 103. You can use code TCB10 for 10% off your order today. Listen, hey, if you want to utilize what they've got going on, they've got LSU, Georgia Tech, Kennesaw State, who's probably the third best team in the state of Georgia right now. They've also got Georgia Southern. So, look, they're expanding. We're excited to continue to expand with them. Make sure you let them know the Crowd Booth sent you. Leave a review of their stuff. The polos are elite comfort level. And make sure you check them out. Let them know we sent you their way with code TCB10 for 10% off your order today. As always, Section 103, the presenting sponsor of all of our Georgia Tech shows. We appreciate you there as well, and continuing to support the show and support the Georgia Tech fan base with your awesome gear. They still got the coaches hoodies, which you could, is interesting to me. So I see this comment by Altima, and it kind of takes us to the defensive side of the football. Altima says Duke has a great offense, but the defense hasn't been up to the Diaz standard. This could be a crazy game as far as the points scored. Ralph, What does FanDuel have the over under at in this one? I'm going to get that and I'm going to tell you about this because this is actually a defense ultimate that's kind of starting to hit their stride a little bit. They are coming off a game 2 weeks ago where they allowed their 60 and a half. 60 and a half, Ralph says, is the over under on this. They're coming off a game 2 weeks ago against Cal where they allowed their lowest rushing total of the year in 41 yards. Now, Cal is not some electric running team, but when you limit a team to 41 yards rushing, you can't just say the other team sucks. You got to be doing something right. And so they have. They forced 11 turnovers across their last 3 games. Very opportunistic. That's something kind of keep an eye on here in this game as well. And this is a guy who, a group that, for a couple of years now, Duke has been up there in terms of even going back to the Mike Elko era. They've had like a defensive lineman that has been near or at the top of the ACC in sacks. A couple years ago, Elko's last year was Anias Peebles. They had a good veteran group last year, and then obviously this year they've got Vincent Anthony Jr. 6.5 sacks already this season. So, in terms of Georgia Tech's passing game, here's another challenge for this offensive line. Right, you go back to week 1, which feels like it was so long ago. Georgia Tech struggled up front with some of those stunts. Manny Diaz's calling card is defense. I guarantee you, they're going through what Colorado did, what Clemson did, and some of these other teams and saying, all right, what worked? What looks can we give them that might confuse this offensive line and allow us to pressure Haynes King and not let him create from the offensive backfield? So I think to me, that's, one of the things that, that's the matchup to probably watch. You've got a front seven that's been really good. You've got the ACC sack leader, but you've got a Georgia Tech offensive line that's only allowed 3 sacks this season. So, whoever wins that battle might win the football game because those are 2 strengths right now. Georgia Tech's gotten better up front. It's going to be interesting as well. And, Zach says this as well. Bootleg passes, here we come. I'd be a total fan of seeing them get Haynes King out in space. Like I really, really, really would like to see that. So it's good. The wife just bought me one of the Georgia Tech polos, really good quality. Appreciate you. Hope you use that code. And Nico says I just bought a polo with code TCB10. So I guess the turnover successes, we kind of put a pin in Duke and why they're favored in this one. They're +5 in the turnover margin. Georgia Tech is -3. Look, this is a game where if you go on the road and you give them some life, they're going to beat you. Like just straight up, they're going to beat you. That's the worry for me. You combine their offensive success, you combine their defense that looks like it's playing better. You have a strength on strength battle with Georgia Tech's offensive line just allowing 3 sacks and the ACC sack leader and a good overall front seven in pressure rate. That's good on good. And who is going to be able to win that battle? That might determine who wins this game. I guess the one thing that we talk about is in terms of the positives of Georgia Tech is you got to have a top 15 rushing attack in the country. Believe they're 10th or 11th, depending on the ranking or depending on that final number. Look, and you're balanced, right? Haynes King has over 400 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns. But you have Hosley, who has over 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jamal Haynes has yardage there as well. We talked about how Duke's defense has come on as of late, but this is a group that hasn't faced, when we talk about those games they've been good against, has not faced Georgia Tech's run game. And I think that is a key in this one. They allow over 123 yards on the ground per game. And I think one of the biggest things is Duke has to shut down one of what Georgia Tech is going to do. They've got to shut down one of these things. Haynes King, they have not been electric through the air, but he's been very, very efficient. 71.2% pass completion rate. He has 4 different receivers that have caught a touchdown pass. And in terms of third downs, Georgia Tech has converted at a 47.1%, which is impressive. And Duke is allowing people to convert at a 43.8%. So I think in terms of that offense, you've got the edge against their defense. Can you make them pay? And this is why I think, look, you talk about that. What was around 60.5, you said? 60.5, point spread? Or I'm sorry, not point spread. That would have been insane. That I would have taken anybody to plus 60.5. The over-under is at 60.5 in this one. And you kind of sit in a scenario where you're telling yourself, okay, based off what Bryce has said, it's one of those things where, I mean, truthfully, you have an offense on Duke and an offense on Georgia Tech that could probably put up at least 25 points apiece in this game. So if you're looking at that over under, might not be crazy. Can one of these teams get over 30? I think that is that would be interesting to me. Um, I guess the last part of this is, Georgia Tech has been good against the pass. Third in the ACC against pass, allowing under 200 yards a game. That's great. You haven't played anybody that really throws the football. So that to me is like you haven't played anyone that has thrown the football. So I guess that's great. Um, it's awesome to see. You've held them to an average of 21 points a game. All these numbers are fantastic, and I think it's a lot of fun. But you know, I think that we just kind of sit here and we say, okay, Duke numbers on the rise. They haven't played anyone great as of late. Georgia Tech's numbers are really good, but it's kind of feels like nationally empty stats because yeah, you've played well, but that's what you should have done. I mean, now that we know what Clemson is, that's what you should have done to them and what you did. And so it's one of those things that you look at the numbers. I've listed off a lot of them. They're a lot of fun. They're good to talk about, but at the end of the day, you got to line up and play on Saturday. So without further ado, it's time for the prediction. In the preseason, no, I'm not faulting you for the schedule, Zach, at all. No, you play your schedule in front of you, but I think you do have to account for maybe what it really might be. Let's talk, though, here real quick about the prediction. In the preseason, I picked Georgia Tech to go 9-3. I said losses against Clemson, Georgia, and I did pick Duke to be one of the losses. When I posted that, I mean, you had some fans that are so far up this administration's butt that they can't even understand why you would even lose to Duke. And I've seen some people say we can't let our season be lost to Duke. What does that mean? Duke has been a pretty good football team and program the last 3 or 4 years, even extending beyond that. I don't necessarily understand what that means. So I'm not, I didn't understand that then. I don't understand how people could be appalled at the fact of losing to Duke now. It makes zero sense. It makes perfect sense, but it's, those type of people you can't engage in conversation with because they refuse to be, looking at what other teams do and probably watch one game a day and then go do what they want to do the rest of the Saturday. I think Duke's going to be able to score. I do. And I think it's going to challenge Georgia Tech's offense to be very, very efficient. So when I've looked at this game and I've flip-flopped on my pick back and forth all week, I understand why Duke is favored. I understand why the numbers say that. They have all the makings on paper of a pretty solid football team. And so for all the people that say, well, Duke sucks, you really do have to ask yourself, what has Georgia Tech shown to make you believe that they're going to walk in and just walk out with a win with relative ease? I don't think this is going to be an easy win. I am picking Georgia Tech to win this game. I do not think this will be easy. I think it's going to be a game where you have to make a couple big plays. You cannot turn the ball over in this football game. Like bottom line, you cannot turn the ball over in this football game. Duke, not only can they will take advantage of that. I've got Georgia Tech winning this one. Final score 30-24 over Duke. I think it's going to be a good football game, one of the more fun ones in that early slate. And we'll be live tomorrow talking about this game after the game. But, I think Georgia Tech's going to be able, defense is going to be able to make some plays. You're going to have some guys step up, and the offense maybe makes a play late to go win this football game. I think it's a really good one. You got to play your best because truthfully, when you look at this schedule, you have to win this game. Like we're starting talking about and people have been talking about it all week. How do you get in? And can you get in without winning the ACC title? And what if you lose to Georgia in the year? What does your resume need to look like? I think you're kind of sitting here and you're like, you got to win this game because right now this looks like probably the third biggest game on your schedule. Clemson at home, Georgia on the road, and we're not guaranteeing a trip to Charlotte, but I think you should be there. But this to me is it's important. It's important. Will says, don't forget about Menzies' running ability. I think Menzies is more than capable of pulling it down and running. He's athletic enough. He's not like the statue that's about an hour and a half north up there when he was at Tulane, an hour and a half north, maybe up I-12, I-10. Bottom line, 30-24. I've got Georgia Tech winning this game. I like Brent Key's mentality. I just told you, what has Georgia Tech done to make you prove? Here's my answer. They just keep winning. And I think at some point you just got to say, okay, the numbers may be against you in some of the categories. It might not look the way that fans want it to look, but bottom line, this team wins. This team wins. So, Paul, that I am taking the under in that. So that would put them at 54. The over-under's at 60. Man, I'll tell you one thing, though. I saw some predictions, 35-31, 38-31. Like, if Georgia Tech's offense gets above 30 points, that's impressive to me against a Duke team that I think is playing pretty well. And can they take advantage of mistakes? So all that considered, I've got Georgia Tech winning this one 30-24. That's your preview. That's what you got going on. And we appreciate you there tuning in as well. The injuries for Georgia Tech, how do they account for them? Who gets more of the snaps? We'll talk about that tomorrow there too. So we appreciate you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be live tomorrow post-game reacting to this game. I don't know the time frame yet, but we'll be live doing it. We appreciate you tuning in. Shout out to Will last night talking about Auburn. Shout out to Will and Ralph for doing the show on Wednesday night. Live tomorrow talking Georgia Tech Duke. We'll see if he'll go live talking about Missouri and Auburn on tomorrow. And then also we'll be live again on Sunday night with recapping what happened in Week 8 of college football. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Have a fantastic weekend for those traveling up to Durham. We appreciate it. We will see you next time on another episode. I got to figure out how to do this on the Crowded Booth. Swarm Talk. Appreciate you watching.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.